Arohi Mehta and Sheikh Zain al-Nouri, a young pregnant woman and a wealthy Dubai Sheikh, were bound by a secret no one else knew, until one night in a luxury penthouse changed everything, leaving her vanished without a trace and the city in shock. Arohi Mehta arrived in Dubai carrying a secret that weighed heavier than her suitcase. She was 26, from a middle-class family in India, and had come to the city believing her life was about to change forever. For over a year, she had been involved with Sheikh Zain al-Nouri, a powerful and extremely wealthy man who lived behind layers of privacy and influence. Their relationship had always existed in shadows, hidden from public view, confined to luxury apartments and short international trips. What changed everything was her pregnancy. Arohi believed the child was not just proof of their bond, but a turning point that would finally force acknowledgement and commitment. In the weeks before her disappearance, Arohi appeared restless and determined. She moved into a high-rise penthouse booked under a corporate name, overlooking Dubai's glowing skyline. She avoided sharing her exact location with most people, but she hinted to close friends that she was preparing for a serious confrontation. Medical records later showed she had recently visited a private clinic, confirming she was well into her pregnancy. Despite the fear and uncertainty, she seemed hopeful, convinced that her future was about to be secured. On her final day, Arohi was seen entering the residential tower alone. Security cameras captured her walking through the lobby, calm and composed. That night, her phone remained active for a short time before going completely silent. Messages were left unread. Calls went unanswered. By morning, Arohi Mehta had vanished without a trace. The city moved on as usual, unaware that inside one luxury penthouse, a story had begun that would soon disturb two nations and expose how easily a life could disappear behind wealth and power. Back in India, concern quickly turned into fear when Arohi Mehta failed to make contact for several days. She had never gone this long without speaking to her mother, even during busy work trips. Her family initially assumed there was a phone issue, but as hours turned into days, the silence became unbearable. Repeated calls went straight to voicemail, and messages remained unread. Sensing something was terribly wrong, her family contacted local authorities and the Indian embassy, officially reporting her as missing. Embassy officials confirmed that Arohi had entered Dubai legally, but there was no record of her departure. This raised immediate alarm. Her bank activity showed no transactions after the night she disappeared, and her phone was last connected to a cellular tower near an upscale residential district. Investigators in Dubai began tracing her movements. Her passport was not found at the airport, suggesting she had not left the country. This ruled out the possibility of a sudden return or escape. The search intensified when her rented vehicle was located in the basement parking of a luxury tower not far from the penthouse where she had been staying. The car appeared untouched, as if it had been carefully placed there. Inside, officers discovered personal items including a handbag, prenatal medical reports, and prescribed vitamins. The documents confirmed she was pregnant, information that had not yet been shared publicly. This discovery changed the case completely, transforming it from a missing person investigation into something far more serious. As news reached her family, shock turned into devastation. The idea that a pregnant woman could vanish so completely raised disturbing questions. Who was the father, and what role did he play in her final hours? With no signs of struggle and no clear suspects, the case entered a troubling phase, where power, secrecy, and unanswered questions began to overshadow the search for truth. Investigators soon focused their attention on Sheikh Zain al-Nouri, the man believed to be closest to Arohi Mehta in her final days. Publicly, he was known as a disciplined businessman with strong social standing and influential connections across the Gulf. His name carried weight, and his life was carefully protected from scandal. When questioned, his representatives described Arohi as a casual acquaintance, someone who had no serious place in his life. However, digital records told a very different story. Financial transactions revealed that Arohi's luxury penthouse had been paid for through a company linked indirectly to the Sheikh. Flight records showed that both of them had traveled to the same destinations multiple times over the past year, often within hours of each other. Phone data indicated frequent private contact, contradicting claims that their relationship was insignificant. Investigators believe the connection was deliberately hidden to protect reputation and family honor. Security footage from the high-rise building placed Arohi entering the penthouse on the night she disappeared. She was seen walking calmly, carrying a small bag. No footage ever showed her leaving. Even more troubling was the discovery that the building's surveillance system had stopped recording for approximately 40 minutes that same night. Management claimed it was a technical malfunction, but experts later said the outage appeared intentional. When investigators requested access to the penthouse, they found it unusually clean, almost staged. There were no obvious signs of violence, yet something felt wrong. The air smelled faintly of chemical cleaners, and several items appeared recently moved. A broken bracelet was recovered from beneath furniture, later identified by Arohi's family as hers. While none of this directly proved a crime, the evidence suggested careful planning. As suspicion grew, the investigation began to collide with invisible walls. Interviews were delayed, access was restricted, and silence surrounded the Sheikh. With no body and no confession, the case slipped into dangerous territory where influence could erase traces and truth struggled to survive. The discovery inside the penthouse shifted the investigation into a darker direction. Forensic teams carefully examined every surface, aware that anything obvious may have already been removed. The floors and walls showed signs of recent deep cleaning, far more thorough than standard maintenance. Investigators detected traces of industrial-grade chemicals commonly used to remove biological material. While no visible blood was found, experts believed the space had been intentionally sanitized to destroy evidence. This suggested panic mixed with precision, a combination that alarmed authorities. Among the few items recovered was a delicate gold bracelet lodged beneath a sofa frame. It had been bent out of shape, as if it had snapped under sudden pressure. Arohi's family later confirmed it was hers, a piece she wore daily. The discovery contradicted claims that she had simply left the penthouse voluntarily. Personal items such as her shoes and a light jacket were also missing, raising further suspicion. It appeared she had not planned to leave that night. The pregnancy added urgency and gravity to the case. Medical documents confirmed she was carrying a healthy fetus, making the disappearance not just about one life, but two. Investigators quietly began treating the case as a possible double homicide, though publicly it remained classified as a missing person investigation. This cautious approach reflected the sensitivity surrounding the suspect's status. Media outlets began to report on the mystery, and public pressure mounted. Questions surfaced about how someone could vanish from one of the most secure buildings in the city. Critics accused authorities of moving too slowly, while others feared the influence of wealth was shaping the investigation. As evidence pointed toward deliberate erasure, the case exposed an unsettling truth. In places where power is absolute, even the most secure walls can hide terrible secrets, and justice can become painfully fragile. As investigators searched for answers, they turned to the digital life Arohi Mehta left behind. Her phone, though never recovered, had been backed up to a cloud account, revealing fragments of her thoughts in the days before she vanished. Messages and saved notes showed a woman who was no longer afraid. Arohi believed her pregnancy had changed the balance of power. She was no longer willing to remain hidden, and she felt certain that the truth would protect her. Friends later described her as calm but determined, convinced that her future was finally within reach. Search history recovered from her devices revealed telling details. Arohi had researched marriage laws, child custody rights, and legal protections for unmarried mothers in the UAE. She had also looked up timelines for public marriage announcements and legal recognition of children born to influential families. Investigators believed she was preparing for a decisive moment, not an escape. This supported the theory that she intended to confront the Sheikh that night and demand commitment rather than financial support. Location data showed that on the day she disappeared, Arohi had visited a private maternity clinic and then returned directly to the penthouse. She made no further travel plans and canceled an upcoming hotel booking, suggesting she expected to stay. Her last known activity was opening a document saved as future plans, which included notes about relocating to a quieter neighborhood and preparing for motherhood. Investigators now believe the confrontation did happen, but not the way Arohi expected. The combination of power, secrecy, and fear of scandal may have triggered an irreversible decision. What was meant to secure her dignity may have instead placed her in extreme danger. With every new digital clue, the image of Arohi grew clearer, while the truth about her final moments slipped further into silence. As the case gained attention, cracks began to appear in the carefully controlled environment surrounding the penthouse. Investigators quietly interviewed staff members who worked in the building on the night Arohi Mehta disappeared. Most were hesitant, aware of the power connected to the residence. However, inconsistencies soon emerged. A maintenance worker revealed that he had been instructed to shut down a section of the surveillance system for what was described as a routine security adjustment. The timing of this instruction matched the exact window when the cameras stopped recording. Another worker reported seeing activity in the building during the early hours of the morning, long after the penthouse lights should have been off. Large sealed containers were moved through a service elevator, accompanied by private security personnel rather than regular staff. The containers were labeled as construction or renovation waste, a classification that allowed them to leave the premises without inspection. These containers were transported to an unknown location and never recovered. Despite these troubling accounts, formal statements became difficult to obtain. Several employees suddenly resigned or were transferred. Others withdrew their cooperation entirely, citing legal obligations and confidentiality agreements. Investigators believe these agreements were used to silence potential witnesses and protect those involved. While the testimonies suggested a coordinated effort to remove evidence, none of the witnesses could directly confirm what had been inside the containers. The investigation began to slow as legal barriers tightened. Requests for expanded searches and deeper financial scrutiny faced delays. Behind the scenes, influence was quietly at work. What could have been a breakthrough instead revealed how effectively truth could be buried when fear and loyalty were enforced by wealth. Arohi's disappearance was no longer just a mystery of a single night, but a chilling example of how systems can be manipulated to erase a person completely, leaving only fragments of a life behind. Public pressure continued to build as weeks passed with no sign of Arohi Mehta. The case had crossed borders, drawing attention from international media and human rights groups. Under this growing scrutiny, Sheikh Zayed Al Nouri announced that he would be leaving Dubai temporarily for medical treatment abroad. The timing immediately raised suspicion. While his representatives insisted the trip had been planned long before, investigators privately feared that his departure would complicate the case beyond repair. Arohi's family reacted with anger and despair. They believed justice was slipping away in front of them. From India, they held press conferences and appealed directly to authorities, accusing powerful interests of shielding the truth. Indian officials formally requested cooperation and transparency, but diplomatic and legal limitations slowed any meaningful action. Jurisdictional boundaries became invisible walls, separating evidence from accountability. In Dubai, the investigation quietly lost momentum. Key approvals were delayed, and search requests remained unanswered. Without a body, prosecutors hesitated to escalate the case. Internally, the file began to shift from active pursuit to administrative review. The media, once relentless, slowly moved on to newer stories. Arohi's name appeared less frequently in headlines, replaced by speculation and fading public outrage. Despite this, the case left a mark. Sheikh Zayed's sudden absence fueled rumors within elite circles. Business partners grew cautious, and invitations quietly stopped coming. Though untouched by law, his image of absolute control began to crack. Meanwhile, Arohi's unborn child became a haunting symbol for activists, representing lives erased without consequence. As months turned into years, the truth remained buried beneath layers of silence and privilege. Arohi Mehta had not been found, and no one had been held responsible. Yet her disappearance lingered like an unspoken warning, revealing how easily power could outrun justice, and how quickly the world could forget a woman who dared to demand recognition. Just as the case seemed destined to fade into obscurity, an unexpected development reignited interest. A private investigator hired by Arohi Mehta's family uncovered a series of unusual financial movements that occurred days after her disappearance. Large sums of money had been transferred through offshore accounts to individuals connected to specialized cleaning services, waste transportation firms, and private security contractors. These payments were fragmented and routed through shell companies, suggesting a deliberate attempt to avoid detection. When this information was quietly shared with authorities, it raised serious concerns. The timing of the transfers aligned closely with the night Arohi vanished and the early morning hours that followed. Investigators believe the payments were not routine expenses, but part of an emergency response to a crisis. Each recipient denied wrongdoing, claiming the funds were compensation for standard services. Contracts presented were vague, heavily redacted, and protected by strict non-disclosure clauses. Further analysis revealed that one waste disposal company involved had access to high-temperature industrial facilities capable of destroying organic material completely. While no direct proof linked these services to Arohi, the implication was disturbing. The lack of physical evidence now appeared less accidental and more engineered. Someone had likely planned not just to make her disappear, but to ensure she could never be found. Despite the alarming nature of these findings, legal limitations once again stalled progress. Offshore banking secrecy laws blocked deeper financial tracing, and key records were declared inaccessible. Without a confession or a body, prosecutors argued the evidence remained circumstantial. The revelations shocked the public but failed to move the case forward. What remained was a chilling realization. Even when patterns pointed clearly toward a cover-up, truth could still be smothered by money and legal protection. Arohi's disappearance was no longer just unsolved. It was actively buried, sealed behind transactions designed to erase responsibility as completely as her existence. Years passed, and the disappearance of Arohi Mehta slowly transformed from breaking news into a cold case. Officially, it remained open, but in reality, no active investigation continued. There were no new searches, no fresh forensic efforts, and no public updates. Arohi's name lived on mainly through online forums, documentaries, and the determination of her family, who refused to accept silence as an answer. Every anniversary of her disappearance reopened old wounds and renewed unanswered questions. Sheikh Zayn al-Nouri eventually returned to public life. While no charges were ever filed against him, the shadow of suspicion never fully disappeared. His public appearances became more controlled, his circle smaller. Some business deals quietly collapsed, and longtime associates distanced themselves without explanation. In elite social spaces, his name was spoken more carefully, often followed by uneasy silence. Though legally untouched, his reputation carried an invisible stain. For Arohi's family, life was frozen in uncertainty. Without a body, there was no closure, no funeral, and no legal acknowledgement of death. Her mother continued to keep her room untouched, holding on to the belief that answers might still emerge. Activists and women's rights groups occasionally revived the case, using Arohi's story to highlight how vulnerable women can be when power and secrecy collide. Investigative journalists attempted to reopen the case multiple times, but faced legal threats and blocked access to records. Key documents were sealed, and potential witnesses had disappeared from public view. Each attempt ended the same way, with fragments of truth but no conclusion. Arohi Mehta became a symbol rather than a person, representing countless stories that never reached justice. Her disappearance stood as proof that some crimes are not solved because evidence is missing, but because truth itself is deliberately erased, leaving behind a silence that feels permanent and see. Arohi Mehta's story did not end with her disappearance. It evolved into a haunting reminder of the limits of justice when wealth and influence are involved. The penthouse where she was last seen still stands, its glass walls reflecting the city lights, hiding a night that no one could fully explain. Residents walk past daily, unaware of the mystery behind one empty apartment. Yet its reputation has quietly lingered as a place where secrecy and danger once collided. Arohi's life, though brief and ultimately erased, became a symbol of courage and vulnerability, a warning of how quickly power can silence even the strongest voices. Her family continued to fight in the shadows, demanding accountability, writing letters to embassies, and speaking at conferences on women's rights. They refused to let her name fade into obscurity. Each reminder of Arohi sparked outrage, yet formal justice remained elusive. Without a body, confession, or direct evidence, authorities had no way to close the case legally. Every attempt to reconstruct the night she vanished ended in frustration, leaving only fragments of a life abruptly stolen. The Sheikh, untouchable in law, maintained his public life while whispers of suspicion followed him everywhere. Though no courtroom had judged him, the moral judgment of the world quietly lingered. Every media report, every documentary, and every retelling of the story kept Arohi's memory alive. Ultimately, the mystery of Arohi Mehta exposed more than just a disappearance. It revealed the dangerous intersection of privilege, secrecy, and human vulnerability. A pregnant woman vanished after demanding dignity and recognition, and in her absence, she forced the world to confront uncomfortable truths. Though her body was never found, her story endures, a chilling testament to the fact that power can erase lives, but it cannot erase their memory.